Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Policy Institute. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with John Tillman, President and CEO of the Illinois Policy Institute. John, this week the Illinois Supreme Court, in another decision on pensions, ruled against the plan that Rahm Emanuel had brokered with two of the public sector unions in the city of Chicago that would have raised employee contributions to pensions from 8.5%, which is at what it is at present, to 11% over the course of the next 3 years, and ended the COLA, the cost of living adjustments, which are not cost of living adjustments, they're annuities because they're about 7 times higher than the inflation rate. And so, oh boy, I know you're a Tony North Shore denizen, but for us poor, tax-weary Chicago residents, looking like it's going to be another hammering property tax increase to fund the difference.
Well, the thing I think is interesting about this ruling is that the Illinois Supreme Court, for the first time, has said that the only path forward is if there's some sort of consideration. This is actually a Senate President John Cullerton idea that I'll give you a little of this, you give up a little of that, we make a deal. The challenge with consideration, so in other words, that would be constitutional, is what the court is saying while it strikes this down.
If you allow workers to have a choice, kind of to pick your poison. I mean, pick what you're going to exchange one benefit for another, essentially.
That's exactly right. And the challenge of that, that's constitutional, but can you solve the financial problem by trading out, a debt from one pocket to a debt from another pocket? That's the challenge.
Well, right. I mean, is it true consideration? You have this consideration issue, but then you also have the constitutional provision that's been interpreted very liberally by the state Supreme Court that prohibits the diminishment of pension benefits. So am I freely choosing, in the context of consideration as the Supreme Court understands it, if the choice I make diminishes what I'm getting on a go-forward basis as compared to what I was getting before I made that choice?
Well, the assumption is that, of course, this is a big assumption because this is a nanny state. The assumption is the individual, this could be done through collective bargaining, not by the individual. Collective bargaining, they could negotiate a grand bargain, and the union representatives representing the members of the union could say, yes, we think this is sufficient consideration, so if it's okay for this to be diminished so long as we get this increase over here. That's the basic theory.
Right.
I think it becomes very difficult to fashion a resolution that actually solves the financial problem, and I think that's what we're going to see. And by the way, in addition to that, what this also does is creates a tremendous problem for the city of Chicago and their ongoing fiscal crisis, because the savings from this was baked into the plan that the mayor put forward.
Well, that's just it. I mean, and then they kind of did this bait and switch with increasing the Chicago's telephone tax by 56% for the first year contribution. I mean, it's always the game playing, and you're right. You never get to the structural change that's required when you consider at present. You want to talk about funding your schools and funding your social service providers and investing in transportation infrastructure. And at present, 1 of every 4 state tax dollars goes to fund the still worst funded pension system in the country. That's right. How bad it is.
Well, and another illustration of how bad it is, the city of Chicago is issuing bonds, taking on long-term structural debt to buy garbage cans. This is how Detroit got in a little bit of trouble. And as you might remember...
And at Sopranos rates.
Right, exactly. And that's the other point, right, is they're about to be locked out of the bond market altogether because there's a statutory limit on the interest level you can pay at 9%. They just paid 8.75% because bond buyers are starting to get the message that perhaps this is not a safe investment. So they're requiring this exorbitant premium, or not exorbitant, this appropriate premium for the risk reward scenario. But I think one of the things that's interesting to go back to with this ruling is when Detroit declared bankruptcy, and we did a whole bunch of work on that, and a lot of media on that, and of course the establishment legacy media here in Illinois said, Chicago's not Detroit, this will never happen here. And our point was then, as it remains now, is you're comparing Detroit and Chicago today, you need to compare Detroit 30 years ago to Chicago today, and Chicago is mimicking the exact mistakes that we all know failed the people of Detroit. And you have a coward, unfortunately, unwilling to face the truth, which is you have to structurally reform the compensation and benefit package. And they're in the city council, and they're in the mayor's office, and they are unwilling to tell the truth to the people. They think they can solve it with revenues. Not true.
At the state level, state workers, 27% more than their private sector counterparts, $3,000 more in salary, $14,000 more in benefits on average. Not sustainable. Police and fire pensions. You go look at your municipality. Go to the Department of Insurance website. Their pension portal they created. Every police and fire department in the state by municipality. Look at what the pay in has been over the course of how many ever years a police officer or firefighter has served versus what the payout is, particularly for the retirees. You're seeing retirees get everything they paid in back in year 1 or 1.5, and then they're on for 7 figures on a go-forward basis. It's not to denigrate police or firefighters. It's to say there is no earthly way to make that system work unless you're just going to liquidate everybody's homes to finance other people's pensions.
Let's make sure everybody understands the point you just made, because I think it's the most important point. And I happen to just know the teacher numbers, but this applies to all the systems proportionally. In teachers, Illinois, outside the city of Chicago, you put in $133,000 on average over your 30-year career. You retire, on average, you get back $2.5 million.
I mean, come on.
It is a wealth transfer from the working class and poor. It's a new class warfare between private sector taxpayers, particularly the most vulnerable, whose jobs are at risk every day, money out of their pocket into the pocket of the people that have the most secure job, protected by a Supreme Court that will now allow no reforms. This is what creates rebellion.